To my fellow African diaspora, a very good day to all of you. My name is Ambassador Arikana Chihombori Kwao. Over the past couple of days, I've received many messages, emails, phone calls, and video clippings of the abuse that is being meted to our fellow African diaspora living in China. I've watched in horror Africans roaming the streets of China with their possessions after being evicted out of their homes simply because they are Africans. I've watched in horror Africans roaming the streets with their suitcases and at times with nothing at all, roaming the streets after being thrown out of their hotel rooms simply because they're Africans. I have watched in horror women carrying babies roaming the streets of China with nowhere to go after being thrown out of their homes simply because they are Africans. I've heard many stories of Africans who are married to Chinese being separated from their husbands or wives simply because they were Africans. I've heard stories about Africans being forced to take COVID-19 tests simply because they're Africans. In many cases, these individuals did not meet criteria for testing, or they had been quarantined for the specified time period as mandated by the anti-pandemic laws of China. Not once have I heard any complaints of any African disobeying the anti-pandemic laws of China. Why is it then that Africans are being singled out and mistreated? This situation is not acceptable. It is wrong, and it will not be tolerated. To President Xi, I say, while you have enjoyed good relationships with all the African leaders, it is precisely because of that that you should do the right thing. You are sitting in the big boy's chair, and we are asking you to make the big boy decisions. We're counting on you to make sure that the Africans that are roaming the streets and have been evicted from their homes be allowed to go back home. We're also asking you to make sure the Africans who are roaming the streets because they have been thrown out of their hotel rooms be allowed to go back to their hotel rooms. As we speak, President Xi, may I remind you that we have over 10 million Chinese residing in Africa where we have welcomed them with open arms. We have allowed the Chinese to establish themselves to marry Africans and live happily ever after in our Africa. Why can't Africans be awarded the same welcome that we have given to millions of your citizens? What is being done to Africans in China is deplorable, and the world cannot stand by and allow it to continue. While we understand that the majority of the Chinese are good people, they're good citizens in China as well as in Africa. However, sadly, among them, there are a few bad apples. A few bad apples that have chosen to give China a bad name. A few bad apples that are making China look bad in the eyes of the Africans. This is a situation that cannot be allowed to continue. President Xi, you are a good man. And we would like the relationship between China and the African governments to continue unabated. But the behavior that's coming from a few of your citizens will not be tolerated. And we're counting on you to do what is right, to do what is just, and to do what is fair. The Africans are no longer going to tolerate this abuse. From the Chinese or anybody else for that matter. The African youth are enraged. We're asking, when is enough going to be enough? President Xi, the power is in your hands. We value, as Africans, our relationship with China. Please do not allow a few bad apples within your citizens to ruin what is otherwise a wonderful relationship between China and the African countries. As a united citizens, as a united African citizens in the diaspora, we are asking you, President Xi, to do what is right, to do what is just, and to do what is fair. The children of Africa are saying, enough is enough. The abuse of Africans at home and abroad be it in China or on the continent, has got to stop. You may not be aware of some of these abuses, but as a united African citizenry in the diaspora, we hope you will receive our message in the spirit with which it is being delivered to you. You are a good man, President Xi. We trust you will do the right thing. I thank you.
On April 8th, a large number of African people in the southern Chinese city Guangzhou were driven out by their landlords and had to stay on the streets. Another video shows many Africans dragging their luggage aimlessly through the streets of Guangzhou. One of them says, "We are just walking on the road. They can't give us a house, they can't give us a hotel, and they cannot provide a place we can stay." It comes after all of the cases reported by Guangzhou authorities in April were reportedly related to African people. Chinese media have only reported about testing people from abroad. They haven't talked about testing locals, so we can't rule out the possibility that many of the locals are also infected, but it's not being reported. It's led to discrimination against Africans among local Chinese. One citizen says the Africans staying on the street are a potential safety threat and a virus transmission hazard. Guangzhou is likely going to be a catalyst that ignites southern China. Japan will spend $2 billion to move its manufacturing from China to other countries. Before the pandemic, China was Japan's biggest trading partner. But in February, imports were slashed by nearly half as factories in China shut down. 3 Chinese companies listed on the U.S. stock exchange are facing accounting scandals. Last week, Chinese coffee chain super brand Luckin Coffee revealed that its chief operating officer fabricated about $300 million in sales in 2019. The company's value fell nearly 80% over the next 2 days. China's answer to Netflix, iQIYI, has been accused of inflating its 2019 revenue by over $1 billion. It's reportedly done this by exaggerating its user numbers by 42 to 60% and then faking expenses to explain where the extra revenue went. Investment company Muddy Waters Research supports the accusation. In response, iQIYI agreed its 2019 report contains numerous errors, unsubstantiated statements, and misleading conclusions. The third Chinese company is Beijing-based TAL Education Group, TAL. The company said an employee conspired with external vendors to wrongly inflate light class sales by forging contracts and other documentations. Light class sales accounted for about 3 to 4% of the company's total revenues, or about $90 million in 2019.